Christian Sex Daddy. It's a difficult and shameful title, but I want to remind you of a man who was naked on the cross. I want to remind you of a man who was naked on the cross, who had been tortured for 12 to 15 hours. I put myself through the torture of this uncomfortable title because I was neglected and abused by the atmosphere of Christianity and the peoples in it. I love peoples, but when peoples are unwise, when people are engaging in bad parenting, when people are not helping their children be safe in ways that are clearly extant, if there are ways of safety for a child, will you deny a child that safety that comes through communication and understanding? I am in a painful time. My body is weak. I have lists of marvelous projects. There is a book, a compilation of all of the writings of the finest communities, the community rule from the Essenes in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Didache, the Didascalia, the Apostolic Constitutions, and many writings from groups who have tried to live a peaceable and unified life. I have that book in me. I've asked for support from Shane Claiborne, and I've asked for support from David Bercot. I'm like a professor with 25 projects and no staff. The research that I've done in the atmosphere of Christianity that I used to hate has been so marvelous, and the results have been so simple and so wonderful. But no one stands with me. Who will begin to stand with me? I have felt like I'm dying. My body has felt like it will expire soon. I make this address to some of my favorite people. I am delighted by what God has done in these people's lives. David Bercot and Dean Taylor, wonderful servants who have helped thousands rethink Christianity. Jenell Wilson and Darren Wilson, reporters regarding the miracle of devoted ones who are baptized in the Holy Spirit. They are news people, they are reporters. Jenell and Darren Wilson, find them. Heidi and Rolland Baker. Oh my goodness. A crazy girl that's just crazy for Jesus, that's picked out by God, that ends up getting a vision and ends up loving and serving and rescuing thousands and thousands, 10,000, 50,000 children ready to die, literally in the dirt, diseased and dying. Heidi and Rolland Baker. Rolland's lineage and the way that he describes Rolland's story of Visions Beyond the Veil is probably one of the greatest Christian storytelling atmospheres or stories itself in all of the history of Christianity. If you have not heard Rolland Baker's description of visions beyond the veil, Chinese orphan children that are gathered together and then given direct revelation from God, while these two American folks literally are taking notes of what's happening to these children. Curtis Sargent, Zume Project, the Big Life Group, and Precious Lee Wood. Curtis Sargent, if you don't know his story, you need to find it. Curtis Sargent. And Torben Sondergaard, and many, many others. Torben Sondergaard, this guy, this cheerful guy, this enthusiastic guy, ends up taking ordinary Christians out onto the streets and saying, you believe in God, pray healing over that man. And it happens again and again and again. You are the people that I love, and you are the people that my heart is breaking for, because Father has said to me, get away from them. You can't sit down and hold hands with ordinary Christians who are only running portions of the gospel anymore. Go to 2 John verse 8 to 11. Brothers, I don't want you to lose what you have worked for. Okay, statement 1. You can lose even though you have been working. Anyone who rushes ahead and assumes authority and takes structure, but does not bring all the teachings of Christ. If you're leaving out the details of the baptism of the Holy Spirit, David Bercot, yes, you like the Anabaptists, right? Okay, so let's go sit in the Bruderhof, and let's go sit in the Hutterites, and let's go sit in the plain folks. How is someone going to be inspired to go out and heal the sick and raise the dead and discern actual demon spirits and make them go away and speak supernaturally straight from the heart of God to guide a suffering person? How is a person in that set, structured, plain folks community going to move by the power of the Holy Spirit? There are ways of teaching how to do that. But if all you're focused on is just the practices of the early disciples, you're leaving out the aspects of the Holy Spirit. And you actually have to go train in those things just as well as you have to train in the information. Remember, David, you have the danger of being locked down in actual unclean spirits that are left over from the Jehovah's Witnesses. Father, Son, and Holy Information. Father, Son, and Holy Information. Father, Son, and Holy Information. What does information do? It puffs up. David, I would suggest that you put all of your work on autopilot and hand it over to other people. And you go out and walk with Torben Sondergaard. And especially Isaiah, your son. Your son Isaiah is prepared to be a true apostle, a true sent one by Yahweh Elohim. David, be deeply concerned that you are locked into a love of information that removes the Spirit. Remember, I'm not sure if you're aware of this. The wise rabbis say that even the written Hebrew language was brought from fallen angels, because in the Garden of Eden, there was no need to put a character on a wall to represent the sound shh, because our minds, before the fall, the essence of our souls were able to hold and know and memorize everything. So there was never a reason to write down in order to remember. So David, I would encourage you to depart entirely from the atmosphere of information. Totally. At least I would encourage you to send your wife and your son on a missionary journey far away from information. When you have information in your heart, it doesn't go away. But if you're only dispensing information and not walking in the Spirit with the power that's a gift right from Jesus that you deserve to walk in the power. You deserve to see the healing and make the spirits go away. Jenell and Darren. Darren, I tried to suggest to you to actually go and interview David Bercot and some of the early Christian writing studiers, because they're changing the world. They're letting people know. They are. They're letting people know precisely how the early disciples lived, so that they can adjust their behavior and discover like goodies and benefits, because they're just simply trying out some of the things. Remember, let's go back. 2 John, verse 8 to 11. If you discover a groovy thing and rush ahead with it, but are not bringing the full teaching of Christ, what is the result? You don't have God. Come on, read it. If you head off into the true original faith doctrine and ignore the Holy Spirit doctrine, you don't have God. You must bring all the details of Christ. That is why I am different. I hated Christianity because I could feel that it was fake, but I didn't even care about how it was fake, because it was just a big old mess. And I didn't want to have anything to do with that big old mess. That's the reality. I didn't want to have anything to do with that big old mess of Christianity. But then God woke me up. God woke me up through messianic prophecy, eloquently presented. Hey, there's nobody else in all human history that's been predicted for thousands of years. And there's this book that clearly hasn't been changed. And when they discover the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's like, oh my gosh, here's copies of the Bible that are 250 years older than Jesus, and it's all exactly the same. That blew my mind. Just that one article of information shook my soul so much. I was like, damn, how come they didn't show me this when I was 6 years old? How come they did not present to me repetitively? The predictions are amazing. The Dead Sea Scrolls proves the Old Testament's never been changed. The Koine Greek New Testament is the most duplicated book before the printing press in all the world. So, the predictions about Jesus and the story of Jesus are fully supernatural bundle. That's number one. That's the best one, the most important one. Number two, he's a public figure, publicly executed, and then rumored. Okay, let's just pretend he didn't resurrect from the dead. It's rumored that he resurrected from the dead and was seen across 40 days by many people, including 500 people at once. Now, are you teaching your children that repetitively so that they're amazed that Jesus is really God? Fulfilled predictions, amazing supernaturally preserved and protected book, resurrection from the dead and being seen by a whole bunch of people, but then the last one is the wild one. What's the last one? What's the third proof? These are the three These are the 3 locomotives of the gospel choo-choo train for the kids. What's the third one? Are you teaching them? I mean, look at 1 Corinthians 15. What is the gospel that you're repetitively presenting? We have these treasures in jars of clay. We have these scrolls in jars of clay that we can look at and we can prove that every single point that Messiah lived was pre-written. Okay, the third thing is the guy walks into town and he heals the whole hospital. I mean, people screaming, freaking out. He heals every single sick person. And he drives spirits off of people who have messed up personalities. He drives off all the sickness and he drives off the spirits that cause messed up personalities. And he's got supernatural powers to walk on water, multiply food, know people's thoughts. Okay, so he's got fulfilled predictions, came back from the dead, miracle signs and wonders. But that's not all. It's one thing for me to have supernatural powers. It's another thing for me to walk up to somebody and just put my powers on them. If you've got supernatural powers, that's one thing. But putting your supernatural powers on a bunch of rough commercial fishermen, that is a greater power than actually having the power. Okay. So, 2 John, verse 8 to 11. I don't want you to lose what you have labored for. If you rush ahead with your information and don't bring the whole information of Christ, 1, you don't have God. 2, you're doing a wicked work. And number 3, you should not influence other people and their families. You should not influence other people and their families if you're leaving stuff out. And I'm talking to all of you on that. David and Dean, Jenell and Darren, Heidi and Rolland. Curtis Sargent and Torben Sondergaard. If you're leaving out anything, when you come into my house, there's a rack of beautiful fabric right next to the door, just like in a synagogue. Because if we're going to get in deep with God, everybody gets a blanket, either over their shoulders or over their head. And it's a joy thing. It's not a burdensome thing. We turn it into a joy. Coming into God's presence is a celebration. It's not a burdensome thing. And Daniel and Kayla in Nicaragua, I'm talking to you too. You've touched my heart. You've come to my life. You're part of my organism. So, this Christian sex daddy thing, it's a burden, it's ugly. But the reality is, that is the area where I was abused and uncared for. So I want to deal with it in a cheerful way. Look, the wonderful gifts in Christianity were not given to me. I went for 30 years just sitting with people and taking notes with no condemnation, no correction, never getting up and going away and getting angry. Oh, well, these people don't understand the doctrine of blah, 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 so I'm out of here. No, I love people. You know that. I love people. I enjoy people. And I spent long, long times observing. Daniel Omotepe. Daniel Omotepe. That's your name, man. For me. I want to go to Nicaragua. I'm sad about my broken kidneys. It cripples me. Do you understand what that would feel like? Do you understand what that feels like? It puts me in a place where I'm locked in a cave and you can come to me and I will give you wisdom and you can go walk in it. Or you can just come hang out with me for entertainment, which is what people usually do. I'm just like entertainment. Do you understand what it feels like to be locked down with kidneys that don't work, having to use machinery just to pull the water out of me, to pull the pee out of me? It's rough. Daniel Omotepe. There's a greatness in you, but you need a lot of cleaning. Okay, so for me, here's my little life. Know it, okay? Know this. They didn't tell me about the wonderful gifts. I don't hate my parents. I don't hate my elders. But it was a neglect. They didn't tell me about the feel good. They didn't tell me about the feel good of the arousal of the body and the sexual pleasure. They didn't chit chat about it. It wasn't like a fun, interesting part of life. So I discovered it in an atmosphere of error, of a lack of wisdom, and a lack of coaching. I just needed coaching. I just needed coaching on how to handle my physiology. And I didn't get the coaching that I needed until I was 36, 37 years old. Just in the midst of discoveries with a wonderful girlfriend. I mean, I learned the things that I could have learned from parents, cheerful parents, at 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, when I was 36, 37. And then, when I had peace in my physiology, all of a sudden, I didn't even know it. I mean, God is over everything. It's really funny. So I don't really complain. I just wonder about what happened to me. So I was an anti-Christian bigot for many, many years. I had been raised by 2 seminary parents who served the poor. I mean, my mommy sponsored 150 Vietnamese, Hmong, Laotian, Cambodian peoples, and she helped them learn how to live in the slums of Philly. My father was a child psychologist, and he loved the moms in the city of Camden. And just a half a mile away, in the other parts of the county, there's these moms that have all this privilege, and their children get so much help and attention, and the moms in Camden get nothing. And my daddy cared. And I didn't even know, you grow up with your parents, and your parents are common to you. But I grew up with uncommon parents who went towards things that were the heart of Jesus. They would go towards things that were simple and peaceable and good for the child and the soul. And I didn't even know what they were doing. But since I was conceived in cheerful, nutty promiscuity, no one wanted to talk about it. And it was hidden from me for 25 years. The feel-good of the body arousal and the sexual pleasure was not chatted about as a marvelous thing. And the buck stops here. Because if you claim to know God and are not hitting that issue as a really awesome issue in life, Song of Songs, the writing of passion. Oh my gosh, this guy is hungry for the woman. Oh my gosh, the woman is hungry for the guy. But what does it say 3 times? Chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 8. Hey, do not awaken the body feel good, the love, the sweetness. Do not awaken. Do not awaken the love sweetness until it's time, which is a really interesting thing. That's a family thing that you can talk about. Is your love, passion, pleasure awakening? Okay, well, let's monitor things. They didn't talk about the wonderful gifts. Boom, that's how you're conceived. They didn't talk about the wonderful gifts. The sweet gift of Jesus' instruction. Well, actually, no, the next one that would be appropriate is the gift, the physical feel-good gift, and then the gift, the amazing gift of the Holy Spirit baptism. It's a really cool part of life. It's more important than school and bicycles and food. Just talking about what the Holy Spirit is doing. Oh my goodness. The wonderful gifts were not addressed. The gift of serving the poor, that's a gift. But the amazing gift of Holy Spirit baptism, that was not addressed in my life. And Daniel Omotepe. See, I know the church atmospheres that you were raised in. And guess what? It's actually a little club of friends that like to hang out and be like the same style, okay? And there's a problem because you can get in a